A nation with an empty wallet, but a wish list full of weapons.
China is actively arming Pakistan with weapons of mass destruction.
Islamabad claims that India poses an existential threat to them. And the only answer, apparently, is more nukes. And guess who's helping them? Pakistan's iron brother China. The message behind this posturing is also quite clear. If Pakistan cannot win on the battlefield, it will try winning through nuclear blackmail. And this is not new.
China's just made a shocking move against the world. The Pentagon just released a global threat report for 2025, and China is at the top of the list. But this time, it's not because of their massive military buildup or cutting-edge technology. It's because they're literally handing modern, lethal nukes to Pakistan. Yes, to the very same Pakistan that was on the brink of an all-out war with India just a few weeks ago. The same Pakistan that had to beg the IMF not once or twice, but 25 separate times over its 76-year existence just to avoid total economic collapse. The same country that still shelters and funds terrorist groups responsible for more than 20 deadly attacks across at least 10 different countries. In fact, according to this same Pentagon report, more than 2,500 Pakistani citizens were killed in terrorist attacks in 2024 alone. And let's not forget, Pakistani leaders themselves never miss a chance to openly threaten the use of nuclear weapons. Literally every single time tensions rise with India, every border clash, every diplomatic fight, every heated exchange, you'll hear senior Pakistani officials casually throwing around nuclear threats. At this point, it's practically become their habit. Even when Pakistan's economy goes belly up and the international community hesitates to give them more cash, they conveniently start reminding the world of their nuclear weapons, subtly blackmailing that if their economy collapses, those nukes could easily fall into the wrong hands. I mean, think about it. Several countries all around the world have faced economic collapse despite the IMF stepping in. We saw it in Sri Lanka, Bolivia, Romania, even Greece. Yet somehow, Pakistan keeps surviving, even receiving another $1.5 billion IMF bailout just this month, in its 25th bailout. It makes you wonder, how is Pakistan suddenly able to afford 5th-generation fighter jets and advanced nuclear technology from China? In this video, we'll see how India recently called Pakistan's nuclear bluff, exposing how almost their entire military arsenal, supplied by China, failed miserably in just one night of missile strikes. Which is maybe why China's now pumping even more advanced weapons into Pakistan, trying desperately to save face and keep its ally afloat. Even if doing that means pushing us dangerously close to something as scary as World War III. Now, this video's definitely not advertiser-friendly according to the YouTube algorithm, and this is why we need your help. YouTube has a habit of restricting videos that talk about war, but this is the reality of the world we live in. So if you can do us a big favor and hit that like and subscribe button down below, it helps the video out tremendously. We appreciate you. So you probably already know that this whole thing started with a terror attack on India. 2 weeks later, India launched Operation Synindur, which literally means vermilion, a bright red powder. And true to its name, it was meant to leave a clear mark. India's military used precision missiles and smart bombs to hit 9 terrorist bases deep inside Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Feeling humiliated and pressured to respond, Pakistan quickly launched Operation Banyan-e-Marsoos as its own counterattack. For 3 days straight, from May 7th to May 10th, everyone held their breath as these two nuclear rivals exchanged fire in a way they'd never done before. Pakistan even fired ballistic missiles from its Hawk series across the border, along with hundreds of Turkish and Chinese-made drones. India responded hard, launching another round of devastating precision strikes. But this time, they directly hit 11 Pakistani military bases across all 4 provinces. In just one night, India's strikes knocked out nearly 20% of Pakistan's entire air combat capabilities. Now, taking out multiple major military air bases of a nuclear-armed country isn't exactly easy. So naturally, the initial reports seemed way too good to be true. People around the world started wondering, how did India pull off something this big this quickly? Well, once experts started digging into the details, everyone realized just how dangerously reliant Pakistan is on Chinese military tech. Turns out, more than 82% of Pakistan's imported weapons and defense equipment comes straight from China. And all these Pakistani air bases that India targeted were packed with these supposedly advanced Chinese defense systems. Yet somehow, despite having all that Chinese tech protecting their bases, Pakistan couldn't intercept even a single missile or drone. For example, the HG-9 missile defense system was meant to be China's equivalent of the S-300. Pakistan had fully activated these HQ-9 batteries and was desperately trying to intercept Indian strikes. But guess what? Not one missile was shot down. Not a single target protected. Even China's highly publicized J-10C fighter jets, the ones China likes to promote as cutting-edge 4.5 generation aircraft, ended up delivering absolutely nothing when it mattered the most. According to open-source intelligence reports, Pakistan lost at least 8 F-16 jets, 4 JF-17 jets, plus several other high-value military assets. Add it all up, and we're talking about Pakistan suffering losses of around $4 billion in just 2 quick rounds of strikes. Also, it's important to point out that right after India's initial strikes on terrorist camps, Pakistan was absolutely furious. And like always, their leaders quickly started throwing around nuclear threats again. But this time, India didn't just ignore them. They openly called Pakistan's nuclear bluff. During those second rounds of strikes I mentioned earlier, India directly targeted 2 nuclear-linked facilities inside Pakistan. One of them was Nur Khan Air Base, a site you'd expect to be among the world's most heavily guarded and secure locations. But guess what happened? None of Pakistan's advanced Chinese-built defense systems managed to intercept the incoming missiles or protect this extremely critical site. An attack like this is incredibly humiliating for any country, but especially for a nuclear-armed one like Pakistan. But then, just to add some salt to the wounds, India's Defense Minister Rajnath Singh publicly called for the International Atomic Energy Agency, the global nuclear watchdog, to inspect Pakistan's nuclear arsenal. He openly questioned whether Pakistan was even capable of safely protecting its nuclear weapons, basically suggesting the world needs to seriously reconsider whether Pakistan should even have nukes at all. After all, if India could tear through Pakistan's nuclear security so easily, imagine what terrorist or insurgent groups might manage to do. And then there's the Kirana Hills incident, which is even more suspicious. Reports quickly started coming out suggesting that one of India's missile strikes might have actually hit an underground nuclear storage facility. And what happens next makes it even more concerning. Just one day after the strike, the entire region got hit by a 4.7 magnitude earthquake, followed by 2 more smaller quakes over the next 2 days. I mean, could these have just been naturally occurring earthquakes? Or was this the aftermath of something nuclear going off underground? Honestly, no one knows for sure yet. But here's what we do know. There were credible reports of radiation leaks. Pakistan quietly evacuated villages nearby, and a specialized US nuclear detection aircraft was seen circling and scanning the area shortly afterward. Pakistan even rushed in several emergency shipments of boron, a chemical that's literally used to contain nuclear radiation. Put all these clues together, and it's pretty clear something serious, probably nuclear, actually happened down there. If that's true, Pakistan's ultimate deterrent, their nuclear weapons, might have just suffered a massive blow. Right after this incident, a ceasefire quickly came into effect, and once the dust settled, it was time to figure out what exactly happened and how bad the damage really was. And trust me, the post-war autopsy wasn't pretty. Not for Pakistan, and certainly not for China. It turned out that nearly half of Pakistan's high-end, expensive Chinese military equipment underperformed badly, and the other half didn't even work when it really counted. Just one day after India's second strike, a ceasefire prevailed. Soon, the dust settled, and now it was time for a post-war autopsy. And let's just say it wasn't looking pretty for either Pakistan or China. China, for one, got a rude awakening. For years now, they've been aggressively marketing themselves as a global arms supplier, trying to compete with the likes of the US and Russia. But after Operation Synindur, the real-world combat results painted a totally different picture. Now the entire world was seeing Chinese military tech in action, and let's just say it didn't look good. Things got even messier when Pakistani generals started finger-pointing whether Chinese trainers had actually done their job properly, teaching their troops how to handle all this supposedly high-tech equipment. Meanwhile, in China, nationalist commentators started firing back, claiming nothing was wrong with their weapons. It was just that Pakistani forces were incompetent and couldn't use them right. Just like that, the blame game had begun. At this point, Pakistan finally started to realize just how dangerous it was to rely almost entirely on one single weapons supplier. After the ceasefire, insiders revealed that during high-level meetings, some Pakistani defense officials actually suggested diversifying their arms sources. They actually started thinking about buying more Western technology, though good luck with that, given international sanctions and politics. Or maybe exploring other suppliers like Turkey, just to avoid getting burned by Chinese weapons again. But the CCP quickly realized they couldn't afford to let their most valuable puppet state slip away. So they immediately started buttering Pakistan up again, promising them even better military gear. Literally within days of the ceasefire announcement, news broke that China was fast-tracking deliveries of next-generation stealth fighter jets to Pakistan, specifically the Shenyang J-35A. Originally, Pakistan wasn't even supposed to receive these stealth fighters until at least 2027 or later, but now Beijing's accelerated the handover by at least 6 months, with the first batch expected by early 2026. It's astonishing to think that a terrorist attack on India could eventually end up catapulting Pakistan into an elite club of countries operating 5th-generation stealth fighter jets. But wait, there's more. If it wasn't for the Pentagon's recent threat report, we might not even have realized that China is so actively helping Pakistan accelerate the modernization of its nuclear weapons arsenal. Now, we don't yet know exactly what form this help they're providing is taking. It could be assistance with damage control and security upgrades following the Kirana Hills incident, or, far more dangerously, China might actually be directly providing modern nuclear technology and upgraded warhead designs to Pakistan. But what we do know for sure, according to the Pentagon's assessment, is that Pakistan's military leadership is prioritizing nuclear weapons like never before. Even with rampant corruption, an economy on life support, and widespread terrorist violence, nuclear modernization remains at the absolute top of their agenda. But why exactly is China doing all this? I mean, what has Beijing really gained by arming Pakistan to the teeth, especially when Pakistan itself seems to be falling apart? Well, turns out, quite a lot actually. First and foremost, Pakistan is China's ultimate proxy state to keep India permanently distracted. By continuously supplying Pakistan with advanced military tech, China makes sure India can never just focus solely on China as a rival. Instead, India is to divert huge resources and attention to its western front with Pakistan. History is proof that this strategy has worked beautifully for China. A classic strategic move to keep your potential rival tied down in local conflicts, so they never get a chance to challenge you directly on a bigger stage. Ask any Indian general and they'll tell you straight away that their absolute nightmare scenario is a two-front war. China attacking from the north across the Himalayas, while Pakistan simultaneously launches an assault from the west. This nightmare scenario felt dangerously real during Operation Synindur. Even though Chinese forces stayed quiet along the Himalayan border, just the possibility of them jumping in forced India to stay constantly alert on its eastern flank, all while actively fighting Pakistan in the west. Secondly, China gets a perfect opportunity to field test its latest weapons by basically gifting them to Pakistan and observing how they perform against Indian and Western supplied systems. Operation Synindur was practically a real-life trial run for Chinese military tech. Drones, missiles, fighter jets, all put to the test by Pakistani forces against India's French Rafale fighters, Israeli Harop drones, and advanced Russian-made S-400 air defense systems. You can bet Chinese engineers are dissecting the results. Let's just say if the PL-15 missile underperformed, China can tweak its design or guidance based on that combat data. If Indian jamming confused Pakistan's Chinese radars, China will work on more jam-resistant systems. Beijing was essentially using Pakistan as a guinea pig to improve its own arsenal. But this strategy ended up backfiring massively. China thought either one or two systems might underperform, but turns out everything failed. The drones, missiles, air defense, and more. And now, several nations are either cautious or completely refusing to buy Chinese-made weapons. In fact, the recovery of a completely intact Chinese-made PL-15E missile has attracted attention from countries like the United States, Japan, Canada, Australia, France, the United Kingdom, and many others. These countries are extremely interested in analyzing that wreckage to figure out exactly what Chinese missile technology can and can't do. At this point, it might be too late for China to recover from this reputational damage, which explains why they immediately threw Pakistan under the bus, openly accusing the Pakistani military of incompetence, rather than admitting their own equipment failed miserably. Third, and this is a really big one, by increasing Pakistan's dependence, China gains enormous leverage over the entire South Asian region. Economically speaking, Pakistan's already trapped in China's web through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, a massive network of infrastructure projects worth over $60 billion. Basically, Pakistan's now deeply indebted and financially tied to Beijing. And on the military side, Pakistan's on its way to becoming 100% China-reliant. Pakistan's main battle tanks are Chinese VT-4s. Its navy uses Chinese warships and submarines. Its air force will soon have Chinese stealth jets. And its missile and nuclear programs lean on Chinese tech. This means whenever there's tension between India and Pakistan, China can directly influence events by controlling the flow of critical supplies, ammunition, spare parts, and even satellite intelligence to Pakistan. It also ensures that Pakistan will never be in a position to seriously oppose China on any issue. Not that Pakistan's ever really stood up to China anyway, but now it's guaranteed. I mean, just look at how quiet Pakistan stays about the Uyghur Muslim situation in China's Xinjiang region. Recently, we crossed 1 million subscribers. Ever since then, we've been flooded with emails asking us questions and advice about growing a channel on YouTube. Even though I try my best to reply to every single email, sometimes these take up too much time, or they ask the same question I've answered before. That's why we decided to put all my YouTube advice into one training bootcamp for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own YouTube channel, you can sign up for this bootcamp by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code on the screen. There, I'll share with you everything you need and answer any question you have about faceless YouTube. So sign up now, because unfortunately my YouTube videos bootcamp is like a Zoom call, so it's limited to just 100 people. Now, back to the video. But let's not forget that a relationship with Pakistan can become deadly, even for China. By handing over modern nukes and advanced military capabilities, China risks emboldening Pakistan's military, making them feel more confident to provoke and challenge India more aggressively, counting on Beijing's support to back them up. And that seriously raises the risk of war. Remember, both Pakistan and India have nuclear weapons. So even a small conflict has the potential to escalate into a full-blown nuclear disaster. China might think they can keep things under control through their influence in Islamabad, but when intense nationalism and survival instincts kick in, all bets are off. If a nuclear war ever broke out in Southeast Asia, the humanitarian impact would be catastrophic on a global scale, potentially pulling other major powers into the conflict as well. Even during Operation Synindur, you could clearly sense the concern from the rest of the world. China itself chose to tread very carefully, mostly sticking to covert support like satellite intel instead of openly joining Pakistan's side. Because the truth is, even Beijing doesn't want a nuclear war right next door, or the total chaos of Pakistan becoming a failed state. For China, that would be an absolute nightmare, one they definitely want to avoid at all costs. Secondly, by pouring so much money and resources into Pakistan, China isn't just exporting weapons, it's also importing instability. The more Chinese projects and Chinese workers there are in Pakistan, the bigger the targets they become for local militant groups. Balak insurgents, for instance, openly see China as an exploiter of their region and regularly launch attacks against Chinese personnel and convoys. Just in 2024 alone, militants killed 7 Chinese nationals in a suicide bombing targeting a bus filled with Chinese workers, causing a serious diplomatic headache between the two countries. Incidents like this create serious friction. In fact, even the Pentagon's threat report clearly points out that terrorist attacks, specifically targeting Chinese workers, have turned into a major tension point between China and Pakistan. And if Pakistan's security continues to deteriorate, which, let's be honest, seems likely at this point, then China's workers and investments in the country could become even bigger targets in the future. So this whole setup ends up becoming a double-edged sword. One that's deadly not just for India, but for China as well. Still, it seems Beijing is willing to take that risk, because to them, the benefits outweigh the dangers. China probably thinks it can keep Pakistan tightly under control through economic leverage and diplomatic influence, preventing any total meltdown. They're also betting that India, fully aware of the risks of nuclear escalation, will always hold back from pushing Pakistan over the edge. Although, after India's bold strike near a nuclear-sensitive site like Kirana Hills, even China might be reconsidering how safe that assumption really is. For Pakistan's military elite, China's generosity is basically a lifeline. Unlike deals with the US or bailouts from the IMF, Beijing's weapons deals don't come with lectures on terrorism, democracy, or human rights. They simply come with a high-interest loan, a handshake, and plenty of shady strings attached. Pakistani generals might actually feel encouraged seeing how quickly China stepped up to upgrade and restock their failing arsenal. Sure, those Chinese weapons performed embarrassingly during recent combat, but hey, they're getting shiny new replacements, so they'll gladly accept that. But for regular Pakistani citizens, China's involvement is like a death sentence. Their country is financially broke and constantly dependent on IMF bailouts. Bailouts that force ordinary people to pay higher taxes and cope with rising prices. And here we are, watching their leaders spend billions more on jets and nukes instead of buying food, building hospitals, or fixing their collapsing economy. Pakistani critics, at least the brave few willing to speak up, point out clearly that it's exactly this military-first approach that's kept the country trapped in a constant cycle of crisis, instability, and poverty. On the flip side, India now sees a nuclear-modernized, Chinese-backed Pakistan as an even more dangerous threat than before. Indian strategists have to seriously consider the possibility that, in future conflicts, Pakistan might feel confident enough behind their new nuclear shield to act far more aggressively. Maybe even daring to launch tactical nukes early on to stop an Indian advance. That's a terrifying prospect. Even if it's limited, it would be the first use of nuclear weapons in war since 1945, and could easily spiral into larger exchanges. American officials have long worried about Pakistan's nuclear security, specifically the terrifying possibility that Pakistani nukes could fall into the hands of extremists or be recklessly used during a crisis. Now, with China openly fueling Pakistan's nuclear expansion, it severely complicates international non-proliferation efforts. The US can't pressure Pakistan effectively on nuclear safety without directly confronting China. But as long as the US continues to strengthen ties with India, Beijing sees no reason to help restrain Pakistan. It's become a messy geopolitical cycle. The US partners more closely with India, China responds by arming Pakistan, India then doubles down on its US alliance, and the cycle keeps spiraling. Even European leaders, historically distant from South Asian conflicts, are becoming increasingly worried about China's reach into Pakistan. NATO, for the first time in recent years, officially labeled China a systemic challenge, acknowledging China's global ambitions could destabilize regions far beyond East Asia. A nuclear crisis in South Asia, especially one triggered by China's aggressive proliferation, would definitely fall under NATO's concerns. There's always that scary possibility, a small but real fear, that nuclear material could somehow slip into terrorist hands, especially considering Pakistan's internal security troubles and extremist groups operating freely within its borders. But perhaps the greatest irony in all this, and the saddest human tragedy, is that Pakistan's leaders justified building their nuclear weapons and massive military spending in the name of national security and survival. But today, the average Pakistani citizen feels less secure than ever. Caught between constant economic hardship, skyrocketing inflation, unemployment, and daily violence from terrorist attacks. Instead of providing security, these endless military investments have only pushed the country deeper into crisis. It's as if the lesson Pakistan took from Operation Synindur wasn't to address why they keep getting into conflicts and finally stabilize their country, but rather to stockpile even more powerful weapons so they don't lose the next fight. And just like that, the cycle of hostility keeps spinning. Only now, it's supercharged by China's massive military backing. India, meanwhile, faces its own dilemma. how do they effectively deter a nuclear-armed, increasingly aggressive Pakistan, backed by China, without getting drawn into an exhausting, budget-draining arms race? India certainly doesn't want to burn endless money trying to match each new Pakistani purchase, but at the same time, India won't sit still either. If Pakistan receives stealth fighters, India will naturally accelerate its own stealth fighter programs and invest even more in advanced weapons, like Russian S-400 systems, or possibly even American F-35s or Russian Su-57s someday. In fact, just recently, Britain and Japan officially invited India to join the Global Combat Air Program, or GCAP, a major partnership with the UK and Italy aimed at developing an advanced 6th-generation fighter jet. Clearly, India's already responding to these threats. And if Pakistan continues rapidly upgrading its nuclear arsenal, India will inevitably feel pressure to enhance its own nuclear deterrent capabilities as well. Before you know it, India and Pakistan could find themselves stuck in the exact same dangerous cycle that trapped America and the Soviet Union during the Cold War, an endless and nerve-wracking arms race. Even if neither side truly wants war, each new crisis will still become more dangerous. Because advanced weapons means faster strikes, stealthier attacks, and much less reaction time, giving leaders barely any room to step back from the edge of a catastrophic escalation. In short, we're witnessing China completely rewrite the security structure of an entire region, and definitely not in a good way. Now you understand why the Pentagon's recent report calling China the #1 global threat wasn't exaggerating. From now on, the world will be watching every India-Pakistan tension with renewed anxiety. Every terror attack, every border clash raises the same worrying question. Will the next Operation Synindur spin completely out of control? One miscalculation, just one attack too many, and we could suddenly find ourselves facing something unimaginable like World War III.